Well, thanks for having me here today. My name is Elizabeth Foster. I'm the Vice President of Research and Standards at Learning Forward. I started out my career working in a middle school inclusion program. I have two children, two daughters, 17 and 20, and I live in a cabin on the ocean. So one of those is a dream. So thanks for having me again. As part of my work at Learning Forward, I've been there about 6 years. I work on our research agenda and also was fortunate to work on the team that revised the standards for professional learning. And that I got to be sort of at the intersection of updating the research foundation for the revised standards and also was a co-writer on the standards. So I'm going to share some slides. I'm going to start my timer and I'll share some slides. And I just do want to point out that the links to everything I'm going to share today are in the slide notes. I might try to show you live some of the stuff, but we'll have the slides as a backup if that doesn't quite work. So if you all could unmute for a second and just let me know if you're familiar with the standards or if you've used them before, what your level of familiarity is with the standards for professional learning. That would be helpful.
This is Annette in Montana. Yes, I am familiar. Your team has presented for us in Montana over the years, and I have used them.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if Earl is available. All right, well, I will do a high-level overview of the revised standards because we just released them in April 2022. So I will go to my slideshow here. Okay, great. So these are the new 2022 standards. And just like the previous, this is the fourth iteration of the standards, and like previous versions, they work as a system. And you'll see here, this is our new graphic that we designed to get away from the list as much as possible, because people are always interested in which standard came first, which standard was at the top of the list. But this graphic represents how the standards work in concert, how they all intersect at the center there. And really, if you imagine this graphic spinning, which we haven't figured out quite how to do, but would like to, you can see that no one of them really stands out as the first standard that is a priority. They're all equally important. And your entry point to the standards, which standard you decide to dive into first really depends on your own context and the needs you have for your professional learning system. Just pointing out this resource that's on our website. This offers you, this is what's called our quick guide. And it sort of describes the foundations for the standards. It lists all 11 standards. And in the bottom left corner is our theory of action for how the standards lead to improvement for learners. And we have found this to be a really important tool for people advocating for the standards or trying to explain how the standards will, an investment in learning about and using the standards will really lead to student improvement. So, you can see here the standards support the professional learning system, providing high quality professional learning for all educators, which leads to growth in educator knowledge, skills, beliefs, and practices, which in turn leads to student outcomes. And we imagine this as sort of a cycle. So the data or the learnings from the growth in practice and student outcomes in turn feeds back into the system of professional learning. So we're always thinking about what's that evidence that is contributing to improvement of the overall system. And as I said, this is on our website and free. Everything I'm going to show you is free and accessible. Each standard follows the same template. There's a common stem. There's 3 constructs in each standard. This is for ease of use. There's then links to the other standards. So as I said, there's connections across all the standards, and we highlighted just a few at the bottom of each standard. What's new for this version is that the standards are balanced across 3 frames. Rigorous content for each learner in the orange, transformational processes in the green. This is about the how. So the rigorous content is about the what of professional learning. Transformational processes is about the how. And then we have conditions for success, which is about the structures and cultures that support the professional learning system. And this is new for this version. It really underscores the fact that you can't just pay attention to one of these frames. You can't just focus on content or just focus on process. It's really needs to be a balance among those areas of focus. Also on our website, if you're familiar with the 2011 standards, I'll talk a little bit about what's new in the 2022 version. There's a fuller document than what I'm showing you here, but this just shows you that the outcome standards in 2011 has now been expanded to include equity practices, curriculum assessment and instruction, and professional expertise. And this was really due to the fact that we were seeing emerging research around these 3 areas, especially around the curriculum assessment and instruction area, and really wanted to offer people more support and structure around these 3 areas. So this again is on our website if you're interested. In the other 2 frames, the additions are the equity standards. Another great new resource that's on our website is a research overview. So it's not an exhaustive paper, but it's about 15-page paper that summarizes the research that supports the standards. So what is the research evidence related to leadership, for instance? We drew a lot on the Wallace Foundation studies about the components of effective leadership and what that means for professional learning. We also contracted with AIR. They did a full literature review based on the 2011 standards and the areas we were talking about adding to the 2022 standards. And this is valuable because as people are increasingly looking for evidence-based practices and having those conversations about what does the research mean for our own professional learning decisions and systems, these 2 resources are helpful, we hope. And then the meta-analysis that AIR did, as you can see here, found consistent evidence that program alignment with Learning Forward standards is associated with improved teacher instruction and student outcomes. And this is a tool that can be used to argue for adopting the standards or using them in policy. It's the first time we've had evidence like this for the use of the standards. And that's on our website. It's also on the AIR Center for Great Teachers and Leaders website. And there are some slides about the specific research findings about coaching or leadership or things like that on the website as well. And we think of those as tools people can use in advocating for the standards themselves or professional learning aligned to the standards. So I'll go quickly through this part. As I said, we have 3 new equity standards, equity practices, which we think of as the classroom level equity content, equity drivers, which is more about the professional learning and teacher level, and then equity foundations, which is about more the structures and conditions that support equitable access to professional learning, and then equitable access for students to learning opportunities. And I won't go through all of these, but you can see, I'll just pause on this one. What you see here is the standard statement that talks about how professional learning leads to equitable and excellent student outcomes when, and then the 3 constructs are: educators understand their students, embrace their student assets through instruction, and foster relationships with students, families, and communities. And this is the STEM, and each, there's a narrative that follows each of these constructs in each of these standards. So I'll just highlight these. And as I said, we added this curriculum assessment and instruction standard, and it's really nice the way this one first reflects the sort of the research in the past decade or so, and then it also dovetails nicely with the efforts we're seeing around the country to focus on curriculum-based professional learning. So there's a nice kind of dovetail with this standard, and publications like The Elements by Jim Short and Stephanie Hirsch, who's our former executive director, who many you might know her. They sort of have taken this standard and gone into a lot of depth about how to support specifically curriculum-based professional learning. So it's neat to see how the standards can be the overarching piece, and then another resource can come in as a more detailed support. Professional expertise, again, this is sort of acknowledging the work that educators in each role need to do to understand and develop their own expertise and think about coherence and alignment for themselves and then for students. So this, I think, is where we might get some bingo points. I'm not sure, but with this version of the standards in April, we also released innovation configuration maps for each of the 11 standards for 4 different roles. And these are rubrics that can be used to talk about implementation and measure implementation of standards. And I'll give you a little tour. These are on our website. They are a member benefit, but I think there's a lot of cross membership. Okay, I have 2 minutes, so I'll go through these. So as I said, these sort of are designed to help measure and discuss implementation of the standards. There, you go in, you select your role, then you select a standard, and then you select a construct within each standard. As I said, there's 3 constructs to each standard. So what this looks like is this kind of progression of behaviors from entry level to ideal. And some of the themes that run through the progressions are building your own understanding, building others' understanding, building your own capacity, building others' capacity, expanding the team that you work with on developing some of these behaviors. So these are, as I said, there are 11 standards, 33 constructs, and we have them for principals, instructional coaches, central office staff, and external providers. So this is a sort of a close look at how you move from entry level to ideal. And people use these in all kinds of different ways to focus on one particular standard, but across the different roles. So the principal, central office, external provider all have a map that they can look to sort of help facilitate their conversations and collaborations. And then teams also use them to sort of say, okay, we're at a 4 in terms of this particular desired outcome around, integrated use of technology. Let's work on that and move and see how we can move toward the ideal implementation. So these are on our websites, and I think there's a version in each standard that is not a member benefit, so you can really dig into them if you so desire. We also have a standards assessment inventory that is a web-based inventory that I'm just going to go for another minute or so. Sorry. A web-based inventory that gathers teachers' perceptions of their professional learning in a way that district and school leaders get reports so they can see how well what teachers are experiencing reflects what's in the standards. You don't have to know the standards at all, but it just reflects that level of practice and implementation. I'm skipping this. And then the last thing I'll say is our website has a ton of resources on it, and it's highly interactive. There's some of the stuff that I mentioned already today. There's also a how and why to adopt the standards. There's an FAQ. There are action guides for different levels. There's one for state policymakers. It doesn't include all the IC maps, but it does include some guiding questions and a protocol for facilitating a conversation about professional learning. You can see that one there. This is just the one I just mentioned. It sort of gives you a protocol for facilitating a conversation that looks like this. And that's all for me, for my delivery. Now let's open it up to a conversation. I went a little long, sorry about that.
It's all right. These are great resources. Thank you very much. Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes, well, about 9 minutes now for questions, if anyone has questions.
Or you can put a question in the chat if that's easier for people.
Who are your primary users? Are they pretty much school leaders? Or?
District leaders are, well, so we have some states that use the standards to guide like resource decisions, planning decisions, approval of external providers, services. We have districts who use them to do district planning, and people do love the IC maps and the SAI as a way to kind of really get a sense for how well the district intentions regarding professional learning are reaching the school level. We are interested in doing some more mapping to other standards like the PSEL standards or the ISTE standards, just to sort of get the professional learning content to new and different users and audiences. So we are doing a series of webinars at the end of April about the standards to try to just sort of keep the momentum going. We had a lot of excitement around the release and then at our conference in December. So we want to just make sure we're getting the word out as much as possible.
So do you work with, or does CEDAR work with you? Are you familiar with CEDAR?
Yes, we work with CEDAR. We're actually working with them on the National Ed Tech Plan right now, and they're very consumed by that. But one of the ideas is to do some webinars with them specifically.
Okay, that's good to have. Is there any kind of sort of certification tied to these standards, or you don't get involved in that part?
It's such a good question, and it's something we have talked about. I mean, we have an online course that people are going through, and then they get the completion of that course as sort of it's a credential, but not in a formal way. And then we have state and a few international affiliates who got an intensive training on the standards or an intensive learning experience with the standards that they do. I consider them sort of power users and experts, but I love the idea of some kind of certification, and we've been talking about that internally.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Hogging all the question time, so I'll give others a chance.
Yeah, and I'll put my email in the chat in case anyone has any questions that come up later. I went kind of fast through all the resources.
And you did say that all the resources you shared they're all available to everyone.
They are available to everyone. Yeah. There's a lot of free stuff on there. The policy guidance, the quick guides, the IC maps are a member benefit. But I think there's one or two that are available on the website to give you a sense for what the whole picture looks like.
Is your membership institutional or individual?
Individual. Yeah, and our digital membership, I think, is $69. So it's a lot of resources for not a big cost. Let's see, anything else I forgot? We do have an online course going on about the standards. And the SAI that I mentioned, the inventory of teachers' perceptions, is in its final phase of the validation study right now. And we expect to have that ready, I'd say late April, if anyone's interested in that.
The online course, is that open to everyone or just members?
That is a fee-based course open to everyone. It's three afternoons. I think it's 2.5 hours, three afternoons in a row. There's one going on right now, and then I think there'll be another one in about 3 or 4 weeks opening up.